It's my pleasure to welcome Vice President of RPO Solutions at Advanced RPO, Tim Oyer, to the stage.
Wow, that's a lot of words. So come on up. I'll have Scott and Justin. We're going to hit this real quick so we can help you understand the relationship that we have and highlight some of the points we've got. But I think what I wanted to start with is, I've been doing this for a little bit, but I've actually had the opportunity to be involved with over 400 RPO opportunities. And there's nothing better than when the client is aligned to the mission of possessing a high-performance talent acquisition function. The CEO down to every hiring manager is in it. They're removing barriers, and you're celebrating, and it's a big thing. And that's why I wanted to talk about TTX, because in my lifetime, this has been one of the most wonderful clients that we've had, and that's just not saying because they're here, but as we look through, they're aligned, they're truly committed, and today we'll share a little bit about that, but there's a lot of Q&A that's going to go into this as well. So
it feels like you're going to raise prices.
It's well, Ben is helping me set things up, so.
Yeah. No, it's not important at all. We're past that point.
So moving forward here, so we look like triplets. I know we get that a lot, but I'm Tim. No, so you've heard what Lamisa said, but my entire career has been devoted to recruitment process outsourcing. Today, I'm Vice President of Advanced RPO. So we're an organization that, although we're just over 10 years old, it's 20 years in the making, and so a lot of hands-on proven, and so we established this one to be very different, but we're focused on both the middle and the large markets. We support most industries, and obviously that comes along with helping companies with their hourly, their skilled trades, and their salaried positions. And with that, I'm going to have Justin introduce himself for you.
Hey, I'm Justin Jones. So I've been with TTX. I'm an HR specialist for 4 years. So I manage the corporate recruiting process. I've been doing that for about 2 years. Started off doing mostly admin-y kind of things and worked my way up. So mostly right now I don't deal with the salaried population, but because of the nature of our HR department, how small it is, a lot of those questions end up coming to me too. So, but right now mostly corporate salaried roles.
Okay, so Scott Howland, the Assistant Vice President of Human Resources for TTX Company. I've been with TTX Company for about 12 years, just over 12 years, which is awesome. TTX is one of those companies that you've never heard of. I'll tell you about it, and now you're going to be upset every time you're at a railroad crossing. So first off, we operate as a co-op in some ways. The 9 Class 1 rails, so BNSF, UP, CN, they all own fractional shares of us. They are the only rails that are allowed to lease, short-term lease, rail cars from us. We have all sorts of different rail cars, different types. We move everything, box cars, autos, lots of containers, everything but energy, so no tank cars, no coal cars. 250,000 rail cars in our fleet. The majority of our employees, 2,000 of them, are hourly, and a majority of that hourly subset are unionized. About 1,200 of those are unionized, 1,500 hourly. 250 people at our corporate headquarters, which is just around the corner here on Wacker Drive, and another 250 salaried supervisors out in the field. So wherever our rail cars are rolling, we have repair shops. We have some major, we have to say we have a shop in Jacksonville, which is underwater right now, but we have some larger repair shops across the U.S., California, Florida, and South Carolina. I always do an analogy if you want to think about our cars. We're trying to keep them in good repair for our owners. Think of it as your own automobile. So we have 90 locations around the U.S. that your car needs something quick. It's an oil change. You pull into a Jiffy Lube, so they need to be all around you. Then we have 3 repair shops, those larger locations, and those are like your car got into an accident, needs to go someplace to be repaired, it's going to be there for a while, or you need your alternator fixed, you're going to leave your car there, it's going to probably get towed there, which we do tow rail cars that have been wrecked into our yard. It's going to be there eventually in a week to a month, they're going to put it back into service. I mentioned the co-op piece, which is really interesting, and it'll get to the ROI question, because again, it's at that point in our relationship that with Advanced RPO that it's not the biggest factor. So we operate to a budget, which is really interesting model, and I think that's why I like working at TTX. We try to be efficient in how we spend our money. We propose a budget to the 9 class runs, one board member from each rail on our board of directors. When they approve the budget, all we got to do is spend the money by the end of the year. So November, December always feels a lot like government. So it's like, what else do we need to buy? Which makes it an interesting business environment. Any deeper on TTX?
It's a very unique organization, but yellow cars with either red or black TTX, and you'll count tens to hundreds of them. So.
And so when you're stuck at those cross buckles and you're watching those cars go by, just think that's Scott's bonus. Every car that goes by, he's making money.
That's a good point.
There you go.
All right, well, Scott and Justin are going to do the majority of the talking today. I'm just here to move the slides for him. But what we want to highlight for you is take a look at historically what the recruiting looked like at TTX, some of the challenges that they had, why RPO made business sense for their model, talking about what was important for TTX in selecting an RPO provider, and then we're going to highlight some data and provide some insights in what's this look like, because we're approaching a 5-year mark. So to Ben's point, we're getting past 4 years. So, but it's been a good ride. But right now, I'm going to ask us just to go back to 2017. I was trying to find a movie or a book, but it was not a really fun year. But let's look at 2017 and have Scott just talk to us about what the recruiting program at TTX was like.
Gosh, I hope those are TTX cars.
They are, all of it. I validated.
It better be.
Yeah, it better be. What? They could be. Yeah, so it's interesting. When I started at TTX, we had just come out of 2008 and 2009, where the economy, coming out of a recession, they had reduced headcount. Instead of being 2,000 employees, they were down to less than 900 when I started. And what's interesting about that is how fast we grew. So when I first got there, I interviewed and quickly got hired, but here's the weird thing about my position, and it was acceptable then. My job, and when I came in as Director of Comp and Benefits, HRIS, and recruiting didn't report to me, my job was open for 13 months. And that was about close to the average time to fill positions at corporate salaried, as Justin had mentioned. And it just was the way it worked. And I was like, how did that person get away with that they could just say, hey, your job's going to be open for about a year? They used a philosophy of multiple recruiters. They really didn't have, or multiple agencies. They had no on-site recruiting. So everything went out to bid. I was there about a year. There you go. I was there about a year, and recruiting ended up reporting to me. And so I'm like, okay, this cannot be acceptable for a job to be open for a year. How do I fix this quickly? Being that we are trying to operate to a budget, hiring recruiters was not going to be an option. G&A headcount is held very tight. We like to keep 255 corporate employees is like the number we have to stick to. So I quickly brought in an RPO model. I'm sorry, it wasn't Advanced at the time. It was some other people that did a great job for us. And at some point, the CHRO said, I'm going to hire a talent manager. And the talent manager was like, oh, I should get recruiting. And they dissolved the RPO. Said, we don't need an RPO, it's too costly. And instead, they went back to this. He had a wonderful name for it, too. It was like a recruiting coalition. And any agency that applied and provided us a W-9 was now, you're in. You are now recruiting for TTX. So a salary job opened up, and he pumped it out to 50, 70 agencies at the same time. And still had no recruiters. So I don't know, I know somebody's probably with an agency recruiter, but I think we quickly became tier 2 or tier 3 on the recruiter agency's lists of, am I going to spend time providing any candidates to TTX? Or I'm going to just give you my Rolodex and see you later. And I couldn't even tell you, I still have people, you probably too, agencies that call and say, hey, I'm in the coalition. Can you give me some recs?
Constantly. Yes. Yeah. You remember me, right?
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, somebody got a lot of free lunches and nice Christmas gift baskets. Not us.
Yeah. Well, and I can tell you that there was an HR journalist when I first spoke with Scott, and he said she's overwhelmed. I'm afraid I'm going to lose her. She's working weekends. There's bogged down with resumes, and that's when we started talking. So, but so now you know that kind of the framework of that, and so I'm going to ask Scott and Justin to answer the question: why was RPO a good fit for the business model of TTX?
Yeah, I mean, so I took this over about 2 years ago, 2.5, during COVID. We were on a hiring freeze. We lost our generalist. So Scott said, you can do this, right? It's only going to be like 1 or 2 open. It's fine.
I totally bluffed on that one. I'm like, we're not hiring. You'll see a slide later on where you're going to see that number is not 2 people.
Yeah, and it was fine in the beginning. It was honestly a really good way to start that for me, because there wasn't that many, and then it slowly started to increase. But also our reliance, our use of the RPO did too, because I quickly realized that the agencies were way too much to juggle. It's too much, and it's not efficient. So for us, I mean, we do have an integration too. I don't think we mentioned that yet, right? We have an integration with our system too. So we were also around that time implementing Oracle recruiting. We were still figuring out the different ways to use that. And I think the two coincided nicely. Started using the RPO more. We got new systems. It was just like it was a confident way to go forward. But for me on my level, it was because of that integration, because of that relationship building that we had. We always had one contact with Advanced RPO. Now we've got 2 because we have more needs, but generally there's been one. To have that, here's a requisition, we needed to recruit for this, send it to one place. Mm-hmm. And maybe that it doesn't always work out. Maybe the requisition is open for longer, but like just to have the relief for me in my position of just sending it over there and saying, what do you think, is enormous. That was an enormous benefit for me in that position as a new person.
I'll add, so you mentioned, I might have said just a couple of recs are going to open up in the next year or so. Probably the same thing when we started this relationship in 2018, was the first full year? 17,
yeah.
And I think we thought, this is just going to be for the salaried workforce, because that's really, what I see in front of me. In the hourly workforce, that time, we did some advertising, we'd get people to show up, job fairs, and we'd hire. I think in the first year, we quickly turned it into, hey, here's a lot more recs than you were expecting, and we need help more hourly than we do salary.
Yeah, I think that's, I guess I didn't realize that came first. It was strictly salary.
Yeah.
Looking for, that makes sense. But I think that the partnership worked well. It's that cultural alignment piece of it that we quickly realized with Advanced RPO too, that it was a good fit. There was TTX is very, Scott, I think you said it best. You said the loudest person in the room rarely gets heard at TTX. So whoever's the more aggressive person is everybody goes, I don't know about you. We're just very relaxed. And that goes for our requisition, that goes into recruiting too. I mean, we've got, I guess the other thing that I'm impressed with Advanced RPO about it too is that our different departments have different natures. So there's, we don't have to name anybody. We don't have to name names. But we have one department that wants to see candidates right now today, and they open the requisition today. So we still always send those over to our RPO, but I send them out to some agencies, and that's always like a juggling act. But in general, the expectation is set that you're taken care of. You're taken care of by the RPO. You don't need an agency generally.
Yeah, and it was the previous company I came from, we always called it last and loudest. Whoever was last in the room and the loudest got their way. And I'm like, that will not fly at TTX. Yeah. It's a different culture. And we had to find a partner where it fit into that culture. Do you want me to talk about the process of finding?
Yeah, and I was going to say, for this slide, if I can, Scott, so one of the advantages I remember Scott wanted from the beginning was, I want a lifetime partner, but I also want coverage, to Justin's point. And so today, you think about the organization, there's truly one dedicated exempt recruiter, one dedicated non-exempt recruiter, sourcer, recruitment coordinator. We have up to 3 individuals that are jumping in to do phone interviews because the ebb and flow of the hourly needs, they jump pretty quick. But that team scales along with the needs, so it can grow bigger, and sometimes it's a little more skeleton than that. But that's what they need at that point in time.
That is such a great point. You just named 5, 6 people. If we had to staff up, we'd have to hire recruiters and people to do the research. If times changed, which they did with COVID, you'll see our numbers were high at the beginning, they dropped to almost nothing, and then they're probably triple what they started with. I would have been laying off people in the HR department. We didn't have to do that.
Absolutely. And then, so why don't you take advantage of this time to just say, why did you select Advanced RPO as your partner? Because I know you talked to a few.
Yeah, so I'll go through the process. Of course, I don't even remember if we went through a paper RFP process, but we probably did. We had to have for accounts payable, or for our supply chain department. But the people that got invited to the room to present, I think one of the things that we did that was wise is we made sure we had hiring managers in the room to talk to the different agencies that were going to come in. I made sure that besides my boss, I also had the CFO in there. Because of course there's going to be some talk of ROI, or how much are we spending currently on all these agencies compared to how is this going to save us money. And Justin, as you mentioned, how last and loudest would not play, I think there's still the people in that room represent the TTX culture, especially hiring managers. So when you're sitting with the group of people presenting from an RPO, it's, do you match our culture? I think you reminded us of a story. I don't remember what was the first name. I know the last name with the name tag.
Oh, Tammy?
Tammy. So we had a new badge system where you come in and you hold an iPad up and takes a photo and it prints out your badge, and you have people stick it in. Here, you're a visitor. And instead of the person's last name, it printed Tammy Horrible. So they come into the meeting wearing Tammy Horrible, but you know what? You played it as, hey, guess what? It's not Tammy Horrible. She's actually very good at her job. And it fit and played with our culture that we said, hey, these are people we want to work with. And as we've grown, you've had different people on our account, and they fit our culture. You specifically, I know you want to talk about a couple.
Yeah. Specifically, Bethany Cantrell that works at Advanced RPO has been wonderful. She's been a wonderful fit. She's very adaptive. But I've got people to speak to the cultural fit too piece is I've got hiring managers that trust her as a partner. So if they've got 2 candidates, we'll say, I mean, that's a pretty common scenario. If they've got two candidates to choose from, we'll get together in a meeting with Bethany and they ask her to provide her phone screen notes and her personal opinion, which is, I've never been on a call with an agency recruiter where a hiring manager has gone, what do you think? They're gonna be like, yeah, they're great. But that's huge because she's a cultural, or she's a resource for our hiring managers. They trust her enough. They've worked with her enough. We have, Bethany does have a TTX email too, so it kind of like feels like she's internal, even though technically not. But I think that helps. It helps build that trust. But we also have our hiring managers recommend Bethany to other hiring managers, which is funny because I'm like, I was going to give you to Bethany anyway. But it's nice to have that, like to see that trust grow over time too.
Well, it's about having a seamless experience for the candidate and the hiring managers, and that's what we've designed this all about. So wasn't the perfect scenario, and we're still learning and evolving, but what do you like most about the hiring program that's in place today that's evolved to where it is today, 2022?
I mean, for me, it's that partnership piece and also that like a one-stop shop kind of resource. Because I mean, with agency recruiters, for me in my position, if I go to an agency, it's not a bad experience. I'm not trying to say that it's the worst. It just there's a lot of duties that fall on me with scheduling and interviewing, and it just there's a lot more touch base, I think, back and forth. I feel like a lot of agencies, they're juggling a lot of different things, right? They have to represent their own agency, they've got to represent the candidate, they've got to represent us. And with RPO, it's not like they're coming to candidates and saying, I've got this job, and I've also got this job. If this one doesn't work out, you don't really like this. So it's just it just works for TTX. I mean, that I know who, every requisition that comes to me, I know who I'm going to send it to first, and that's important. Because we get it started, we get the ball rolling. That's the piece that feels smooth, and I feel it makes me feel very confident in my job to go forward.
And you mentioned it earlier. You said that Bethany has a TTX email. The first iteration of RPO, I thought this person has to, look, feel, smell like a TTX employee. I need the RPO person sitting at TTX business cards, TTX email. I can't picture them working anyplace other than in our building. Advanced RPO, I think, might have been the only team that said, well, our people won't be sitting in your building. They're going to be in Ohio and all sorts of other places. Actually, I don't even think we have rail yards. And we're like, okay, we trusted you enough to see how they happen. Now, we learned a lot from COVID with our workforce that corporate doesn't even need to be there now.
Right.
But it was our first having off-site, employees.
Absolutely.
That worked really seamlessly to where you still, I don't know if all hiring managers even know that Bethany isn't on TTX, a TTX employee.
They're pretty nosy. They ask, they say, where are you? Where are you right now?
Oh, yeah.
I remember, and Scott may not recall this, but October 13th, 2017 was when we met. And Scott was late to the meeting, and Scott's never tardy. But Scott came in, this is why I need an RPO. Hiring managers are pinning him in the corner of the office, calling him, I need my recs filled as soon as possible, immediately. And we were aligned, and it worked out really good for us. Right now, I'd like to just cover some data and have Scott and Justin talk to that, and then I dug in and found some additional data that isn't going to make the screen, but this will help you understand where they are today.
Oh, now you're going to know why I said time to fill.
Yeah.
Like literally the first one up there. But
It comes up a lot.
Yeah.
That
It's
time
the
to fill.
generic factor, so.
yeah, and considering where we used to be 13 months,
Yeah, 30 days looks
I
great.
get it, that bar was really low.
Yeah,
But
Yeah, so what's impressive is, Scott was a year, the time to fill, and today it's where it's at. Number of sites, they mention a whole lot, and we get, that number I think is accurate, but we get brought in, especially those hourly locations. Really proud of the satisfaction level for the hiring managers and the candidates, although we really want to improve that. And that kind of goes on a month-to-month basis, if you will. The turnover is positive for them. We have the interview to offer ratio, which is another traditional measurement of hiring that can be 2 to 1, 3 to 1, but we don't want it to exceed that. And I think as you work with an organization and gain confidence and the respect and earn the trust of the hiring managers, that number tends to get, because in the beginning we were hovering around 5 to 1 until we were able to deliver.
I think that hourly turnover is super impressive of where we're at right now. We used to have 25% turnover for these hourly workers within the first 30 days of work. Because a lot of people say, yeah, oh, heck yeah, I love to climb up and down rail cars, lay on the ground and weld and get sparks all over me in the wintertime in Chicago.
Yeah.
So explaining the job is super important that
Absolutely.
now we're keeping people. The other thing you see, that's very striking is COVID hits and we stop hiring. And this is where the scalability. And you're probably not going to be happy I bring this up, but during this time, we had to change our contract terms. And I think it was that, hey, we want to continue to be partners, But the original contract was not going to work for us when we thought we were going to drop to 0 recs for a couple of years. We had no idea, when COVID started. We did the absolute thing a lot of companies did. We overreacted, overfired, and then you can see in 2021, now we're starting to hire everybody back, but they took other jobs because they had 3 offers.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, so a phenomenal story. And as we look at the source of hire, 89% of all those hires, be it hourly and salaried roles, are coming from RPO recruiting efforts into the marketplace. 6% internal, 3% employee referral, and we've got them down to 1%. We don't get to 0, but 1% from an agency usage perspective. We're working in total on an annual basis with about 40 hiring managers across the country with TTX. Some things that I thought was interesting were, if we take as I talk to our recruiters and say, why do people come? Why do exempt individuals, why is TTX interesting to them? Well, it is the culture. It's a huge selling point for the salary candidates. The benefits, I'll have you do a sound bite on the benefits because it's crazy.
Can we talk about those?
Yeah.
All right. So we work for one of the last companies. We have an open pension plan to salaried employees. We just closed our cash balance for the hourly. Our medical and dental, medical is a $0 deductible, and it's family coverage, no cost to the employee still. It's old school railroad. I know, I wish I would have known this company when I was like 21.
Yeah.
And we're in railroad retirement because at 60 and 30, it's full retirement. But I started later.
That's good. That's really good. But the one thing for the salaried individuals that I thought was interesting is the transportation logistics value proposition, the value that it provides the country for the last year has been one of the big sound bites. That's what candidates want. And I thought that was unique that we're picking that up and we're promoting that in the marketplace. From the non-exempt, obviously it's pay and benefits, but what's really good about TTX is it's the growth opportunity. And I know folks can get trained and move on.
Yeah, the part of, part of another like strategic element to having advanced RPO be such a good cultural fit is the benefits, because I think, on the surface, most TTX jobs probably look pretty ordinary. It probably looks like a really standard company. You look at it and you go, okay, train, got it. But there's a lot to talk up that's underneath the surface, and we need that advocacy on our end from our recruiters to say, no, really, candidate, you need to look at this job. This is really good. This fits everything that you're looking for. So yeah, I think we see that time and time again with candidates. Tell me about those benefits.
Yeah.
Gladly.
It's the TTX story.
Absolutely.
It's telling the total reward. It's telling why we have such rich benefits. It starts at the top. We have a CEO who's says to me all the time, our benefits are sacred. And it's a difficult sell, because at 19 years old and saying, hey, you're going to weld under a rail car. Yeah, and I never get sick. I never got sick, and I was never going to die at 19, so benefits weren't that as important. But you have to sell that future vision of what this job is going to provide to you.
Right, absolutely. A couple other things I asked our team, why do you enjoy working with TTX? And number one is they're like family. They respect me. I'm part of the team, but they listen. They listen for when hourly rates weren't as competitive as what we felt. TTX took action on the data and validation that we had in the marketplace, and I'll let you guys.
Tim, don't be upset with this.
I'm not.
But with people on the RPO, we've found out personal things, and we've sent flowers, and we've sent gifts. We know there's been hard times, and we'll make sure that we send a cookie basket and things like that. Mm-hmm. We'll get one out to you.
Okay, thank you, because I've had a lot of hard times.
Yeah, I was like...
Please do. She's great.
And the last name he said was not the correct one. I don't want anybody stealing her, so...
She's under a suit now.
Well, but also, so they didn't adjust the pay rates, but I can be transparent, and I feel comfortable being transparent with, Relationships, I've always said RPO is a marriage. You have to be fully committed on both sides or it is not going to work. And that's why, to Ben's point, we say no, we don't chase the revenue. There's a lot of bad business out there and we tend to walk away from that. A lot of lessons learned there, but that's big. So then we've brought a lot of different things into the program, from texting, self-scheduling, a whole lot of that. But what I want to do is let's go to some Q&A, but this situation we're on with the economy at this point in time is a little different, but TTX has 3 economists, 3 to 4. And
Well, we're trying to hire one.
okay, I've got one over there. Now, what are your economists saying? Because these guys told us years ago what's happening, and so we were like, okay, what's TTX doing? Because they have a lot of insight that most of us don't. So
Yeah, so that's one of the things we're trying to do is predict our fleet. So we need to know, do we need to add a bunch of center beams to move lumber because housing starts are coming back? More gondolas to move boxes, to move boxcars because consumer confidence is higher and they're going to be buying a bunch of TVs and canned hams, whatever you ship in a rail car. We believe you're going to see a small recession for the next 2-3 quarters. We're predicting our fleet is going to be underutilized a lot of 2023, but then we are predicting that consumer optimism is going to skyrocket and everybody's going to be purchasing those electronics and other things that they otherwise stopped while we were in this mini recession. Automobiles is an interesting, I always think, our auto rack fleet is 97% utilized. And I'm like, all these car lots are empty. What's on these cars? Well, we own the bottom rail car. And the railroads weld the auto rack where they're putting the 3 stacks of cars, new cars in there, they weld it to the bottom of our car. If the economy was horrible, they would come over and they would cut those off, put those in storage, and they'd hand us our cars back and say, we don't want to pay lease on this anymore. So that has not happened. 2008, it happened to 54% of the fleet. So they're also predicting cars are going to start shipping again, so they're leaving the racks on. So I think it's going to be a little bit down, and we're going to come right back up. Housing starts are supposed to skyrocket in 2024 and 25 is what we're predicting.
good. Misa, I think but these guys can dance. I know Ben can't, but they can dance, and I can't sing, so.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much, Louise.